السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
لا إله إلا الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، له الملك وله الحمد، يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير. وأشهد أن سيدنا وحبيبنا وقدوتنا ومعلمنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم رسول الله وصفوته وخيرته من خلقه، أدى الأمانة وبلغ الرسالة ونصح للأمة وجاهد في الله حق جهاده حتى أتاه اليقين من ربه، وترك أمته على المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على هذا النبي وعلى آله وصحبه والتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم أحينا على سنته وأمتنا على ملته واحشرنا في زمرته وتحت لوائه مع النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين وحسن أولئك رفيقا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله تعالى، وخير الهدي هدي سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة. My dear brothers and sisters, as we live in a turning point of history, and we should have no doubt about, and the daily events seem to be, or they are, overwhelming for many of us. They have affected us in, they have affected us spiritually, they have affected us mentally and emotionally. And while it is important to keep abreast of what is happening, to continue to monitor what the situation is and what is happening, it is also extremely important that we focus on ourselves. What is our duty towards ourselves in this dunya and in the hereafter? What is our duty towards our community? What is our duty towards the ummah in general? And what is our duty towards humanity as a whole? Why are we on this earth? We Muslims, alhamdulillah, are so fortunate that we have answers for all this from the Quran and from the Sunnah of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So one would ask himself a question: what should I focus on? Where this is like overwhelming. If we leave ourselves to consume the news 24/7 and just get affected by the daily events in a way that will actually take us down, that there's no bottom for this abyss that we can actually fall into. And that's something that we have to be conscious of and we have to guard against, because we still have to do our job towards ourselves, our families, and so on. So, what should we focus on? And I think the answer to this question could be anchored or could be based on what another question: what is Allah? So, the answer for this question, what should I focus on, is based on the answer to another question, which is the most fundamental in our whole life, and that is, what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala going to ask me about when I'm standing before Him on the day of judgment? There is nothing that is more important than this. What am I going to be asked so that I can think of what should I focus on now? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to ask me about the events that are happening completely out of my control. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not ask me about the history of Muslims and the Ummah and how we got to this point. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask me about my response and my actions and my faith while I'm giving this chance to live on this earth. Allah will ask me about that. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us in the hadith, that no one will leave the first stance or the first position in Yawm al-Qiyamah. لن تزول قدم عبد يوم القيامة. يعني he will not start moving, so he'll be standing حتى يسأل عن, until that slave of Allah, that human being, is asked about four things, and the most important is, what have you done with your life? I've given you a time. What have you done with it? And of course, there are three other items that he will be asked about: what he's done with his youth, if Allah has given a chance to live with it through the youth period, what he has done with his wealth, and what he has done with his knowledge. These are the four fundamental questions. We'll focus today on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask us on about this particular period in the life of the Ummah or in the history of the Ummah, and what have we done in response to this during that, since we are alive now. Allah will not ask one who is not alive, Allah will ask us now, what have we done? So we need to focus now on how to prepare for this response. How to prepare for this response, that actually we have to start with understanding what is going on. You know, we have we always talk about education, and we have to educate, we have to educate, we have to educate. The very first person that we must educate is ourselves. I have to know, as a Muslim, I have to know, I'm obligated to know why or how we got to this point where we are now as an ummah. Because the Prophet ﷺ again gave us another warning in the hadith that whoever does not care about the affairs of Muslims does not belong to the ummah. لم يهتم بأمر المسلمين فليس مني. So I have to care about the ummah. I have to fundamentally want to know what happened, how we got here, and how we can actually improve our situation. And the answer to all these questions are in the Quran and in the Sunnah of the Prophet. However, if you want a book that actually helps you or help me so much to understand how we got here and what actually the consequences are, because when the Ummah declined, it's not just the Muslims who have suffered, it's the whole world. This book, small book, written by Maulana Abul Hassan al Nadwi from India, a great scholar, passed away like a few decades ago. And his name is Abu Hassan al Nadwi, as I said, and the name of the book is ماذا خسر العالم بانحطاط المسلمين? What did the world lose due to the decline of the Muslims or due to the decline of the Islamic civilization? You find it online, you find it maybe as PDF somewhere in Arabic, English, and maybe possibly other languages. I'm not sure. But if you are going to read one book this year, read this one. Besides, of course, the Quran and the Hadith and the books you need for fiqh and all the important essential reading you have to make or you have to do. This is one book that I recommend. If you only read one book, it is the book by Abu Hassan al-Nadwi, rahmatullahi alayh, ماذا خسر العالم من انحطاط المسلمين, or what has the world lost, what did the world lose due to the decline of the Islamic or the Muslim civilization. Because when we know how we got here, then we know how to reverse that. We know how to go, in an awakening. So this is our first duty: is to understand, it's kind of the intellectual, to educate ourselves how we got here. The second one is to have the right perspective about what's happening. We get so saddened, of course, shocked, saddened, grieved by the loss of thousands of shaheed, the loss of innocent infants, children, women, men, elderly. And we get so sometimes even depressed. What is happening? Why is this happening? Why is all this lost? Well, I want to focus a little bit on this word, loss. What is the definition of loss from an Islamic perspective? From our faith, from our own aqidah. What is al-khusran? Who are al-khasirin? Who are the losers? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that the only loser, or the only losers, قُلْ إِنَّ الْخَاسِرِينَ. Inna al-khasirin, like confirm. The true losers, الَّذِينَ خَسِرُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ وَأَهْلِيهِمْ, those who have lost themselves and their families when يوم القيامة, not what they have lost in this life. All these 20 plus thousand shaheed, inshallah, they are the winners in this equation. If you look at it from a pure Islamic perspective, a pure faith perspective, they are the winners. They are the ones that are going to be mediating to do shafa'ah for each one for 70 of his or her family. The children who were killed and massacred and murdered by the Zionist machine, killing machine, will be the ones waiting for their parents at the doors or at the gates of heaven. We have to think of that. We have to visualize that. And we have to firmly believe that while we should not abandon them, and if we can prevent one death Like if we can prevent one death, so I mean, we have to have the both sides of the equation. If we can prevent one death with our action, then as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. That if you prevent one death that is unjustified, then as if you've saved the entire humanity. We have to have that in perspective. But when death happens, when a person is murdered, is killed, as we have seen, unjustifiably, then inshallah they are shaheed and they are the ones who win. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us the story of Ashab al-Ukhdud, for example, the people who were thrown into the ditch with fire blazing inside by the king. Someone says the king of Yemen, his name was Nuwas, whatever the actual person might be, that actually that they are the winners, and the ones who lit the fire are the losers. So now you can think who the winners are, who the losers are. So that is we putting things in the perspective of our aqidah and the perspective of our faith. What else should we understand or should we realize from what is happening is that Allah has a plan for this ummah. And whether we understand the details of each event and the sequence of the events within our short life and within even the couple of centuries before, whether we understand that or not, we have to realize as part of our faith that this is part of Allah's plan for this ummah. That this ummah is khayr ummatin ukhrijat lin-nas. It's the best ummah that was ever brought out, not for itself, but for the whole humanity. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, هُوَ الَّذِي أَرْسَلَ رَسُولَهُ بِالْحَقِّ. He is the one who sent his messenger with the truth, لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ, so that it becomes the prevalent way of life. We haven't seen that yet. It hasn't happened yet. So we have to look at this ayah and firmly believe that it is a promise, that it will happen. And therefore, everything that is taking place now, even that we cannot see the entire curve or the entire, you know, journey or the entire trajectory, if you will, and we can only see as a very small piece because of our short lifespan, we have to have the belief in our heart that this is Allah's plan. So the question that comes after that, if this is Allah's plan, and I want to save myself when I stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I want to save my family with me, and I want to save as many creations, as many people as I can from the loss that we just defined a few minutes ago, the loss on the hereafter. What can I do? What is my duty? How can I actually do that? That should be my concern. While I am following the news, while I am keeping up with, I'm watching whatever I need to watch, or reading whatever I need to read in order to understand what is going on. Like, if you watch, if your screen time per day, hopefully is not too long, but if your screen time is 1 hour, spend 5 to 10 minutes watching the news, and the rest of the time spend watching or listening to the people with knowledge who are explaining to us what has happened. How did this ummah become so weak at this point? Why are we in general, except what Allah subhanahu or whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have protected? Why is this ummah led by a majority of the leaders are basically not serving the good of the ummah, but actually serving our own enemies, serving the people who are trying to oppress the ummah? How did we get there? Allah will tell us in the Quran that it's all a collective fault over the history of the ummah itself. This Quran never tells us, oh, you're going to lose before your enemy is so strong. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always tells us that we lose. If we lose, it is because of our own weakness and our deficiency. So we need another piece of advice here. Read the Quran now as if you're reading it for the first time. If you have read the Quran hundreds of thousands of times, or hundreds or thousands of times in your lifetime, read it now as if you're reading it for the first time, in light of the events that are taking place with the Ummah, in order to understand how we got to the point that we are and how to get out. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. The last point I would like to make, the focus on how to save ourselves before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, how to avoid being among the losers, billah, how to understand how we got here and how to get out, and so on and so forth. This is the intellectual and the spiritual part that we should take care of. Now, the final thing I would like to talk about now is to spend whatever effort that you have in your hand, because Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran, whoever sees an evil being committed, فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ." So he has the obligation to change that. You change that either if you're in a place of authority, like the leaders of the countries that we have been, telling to demand an immediate stopping of the killing or the murder that is happening, a ceasefire. So if you are a person of authority, that is your duty. If you're not a person of authority, then your duty is to speak about it and to urge for the change to be implemented. And if you cannot even speak as, like, for example, those who are living under an extremely oppressive regimes, if you cannot even speak up or post or do anything, then at least resent this munkar in your heart. Because below that, there is no faith. Prophet ﷺ made it clear. Below that level of resentment of evil, there's no faith. Yeah, this is a situation where you can just sit and I don't really care what's happening. That is contradicting our own faith. But the final thought is whatever you do not belittle it. Do not say, what can I do? I'm just a person. I'm just an individual. I'll give you an analogy. You see a rainfall, right? Heavy rain falling. And what is this rain made of? It's made of drops or droplets, right? Drops of rain falling. Imagine you having a conversation with one of these drops. Now, the rain is going to change the land, is going to cause vegetation to come, it's going to even destroy sometimes, like cause damage and so on, depending on the volume and the rate and so on and so forth. But imagine yourself having a conversation with just one drop of rain, and you ask that drop of rain, what can you do? What are you doing here? Why are you falling and falling on this? You know that, and this drop of rain is going to tell you, well, I have no power. I'm just a little drop of rain, of water. If I fall on the ground, I'm just going to evaporate maybe in a few minutes if the temperature is hot, or I'm just going to disappear in the soil. Or I mean, this rain is going to give you all the reasons why it thinks that it doesn't matter. But we know that these millions and billions of drops of rain that are when they come down on a land, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, أحيا به الأرض بعد موتها. This dead land is going to come back to life. Or the rain can come as a form of of like, to when it comes as a flood or flash flood or whatever, it can have devastating effects. So think for a second. If my effort is meaningless, why is the other side? Why are the enemies of this ummah spending millions and hundreds of millions to silence me? If my voice doesn't count, why are they trying to silence me? Why are they spending all this money to have like those, bots or those, whatever they call it, they have different names for the people or machines that go on social media and try to silence the 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 input that is coming from the people who care about, about what is about the truth and so on and so forth. Ask yourself, why does someone or a high official of the same entity that is actually murdering our brothers and sisters in Gaza actually trying to reach out to all these social media outlets to somehow silence that dissenting voice? Why are many or a number of congresses or parliaments trying to actually make it unlawful to even criticize what is happening and criticize that entity that is causing all the destruction? Why is that happening? Because your and my voice counts, and whatever we do, whatever we contribute, it actually counts and it has value and it has power. This is, inshallah, where when we do something, we know that we actually are contributing to the effort that matters and to the effort that, inshallah, is going to affect in a positive way the events and will help us again stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, Allah, I tried my best. Hopefully, I hope for your mercy. Forgive me for my shortcoming, but I did try my best. That's the ultimate answer that each and every one of us must think about all the time, inshallah. اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا وتجاوز عنا اللهم أيد عبادك المجاهدين بنصرك يا رب العالمين. اللهم سدد رميهم. اللهم واجعلهم يا ارحم الراحمين من الفائزين في الدنيا والاخره. اللهم وفقنا لان نعينهم فيما هم فيه وما هم عليه يا ارحم الراحمين. اللهم يا ربنا زلزل الارض من تحت اقدام اعدائك واعداء الدين يا ارحم الراحمين. اللهم واجعل كيدهم في نحورهم واجعل تدميرهم في تدبيرهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك يا ربنا سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات يا رب العالمين. عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم واذكروه على نعمه يزدكم ولذكر الله أكبر. والله يعلم ما تصنعون وأقم.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
استقيموا رحمكم الله. استووا اعتدلوا. الله أكبر. بسم الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.